I want to tell you about an order that came in recently. $3,000. Shopify looked at it and said low risk. The merchant was ready to ship. Before they did, they sent it to us. And what we found behind that order was one of the clearest fraud profiles I've seen in a long time. Not because any single flag was screaming, but because every single thing we looked at pointed in exactly the same direction. Let me walk you through it. The first thing we check is the email address. Not just whether it looks real, but whether it has any history at all. This one had none. It had never appeared anywhere online before the day that order came in. Not on a forum, not on a review site, not attached to a social profile, nothing. It was created for this transaction. That alone doesn't confirm fraud, but it's a flag. The phone number was a burner. No name attached to it anywhere. Again, not conclusive on its own. But we're building a picture here. The billing address was for a business in India. Now, people buy things internationally all the time, so this on its own means very little. But combined with what we already have, it's adding to the pattern. Then we looked at the shipping address. It was a freight forwarding company. And not just any freight forwarder. This one specifically specializes in shipping US goods to the Dominican Republic. So the product wasn't going to a home. It wasn't going to an office. It was going to a middleman whose entire business model is moving American goods out of the country. We checked the BBB complaints on that freight forwarder. There were active complaints from people stating that this company had handled goods that were purchased fraudulently. That's not us speculating. That's documented, public information. Then we looked at the IP address. It was masked through a hosting service, which is a common technique. People use hosting services to make it look like the connection is coming from somewhere neutral. But when we dug into it, the IP resolved back to the Dominican Republic. So let me just recap what we had. A brand new email address, a burner phone, a business billing address in India, a freight forwarder that ships US goods to the Dominican Republic and has fraud-related BBB complaints, and an IP address that, once you get past the mask, also traces back to the Dominican Republic. Every single signal in this order pointed the same direction. And Shopify's algorithm looked at all of that and said low risk. This is the problem I talk about constantly. A fraud score without context isn't fraud prevention. It's guesswork with a label on it. Shopify's risk engine is doing something. I'm not saying it's doing nothing, but it's looking at a narrow set of signals and giving you a best guess. What it can't do is connect the dots between a masked IP and a freight forwarder with a known fraud history and a billing address that has no business receiving a high-ticket consumer product. That requires investigation. It requires someone who knows what they're looking at. The merchant in this case did the right thing. They paused. They sent it to us. We came back with a clear picture of what was going on, and they did not ship. That's a $3,000 save. But more than that, it's a lesson in what fraud actually looks like. It doesn't usually come in looking like fraud. It doesn't come with a flashing warning sign. It comes in looking mostly normal, with a few things that are slightly off. And if you're only looking at one signal, or you're trusting a score you don't understand, you will miss it. The orders that get through are never the obvious ones. They're the ones where each individual flag seems like it could have an innocent explanation. The email could just be new, the phone could just be private, the IP could just be a VPN, the freight forwarder could just be a legitimate shipping preference. But when you put them all together, there's only one story they're telling. That's what we do at FRIQ Labs. We read the whole story so you don't have to guess at it. If you're a Shopify merchant selling anything high ticket and you've never had a fraudulent order, you might think this doesn't apply to you. I thought the same thing once. And then it happened, and I realized I'd just been lucky. Don't wait for the expensive lesson. That's what we're here for. We currently have a free trial right now at FRIQLabs.com.